What's up, everybody? My name is Rahul Reddy, and I am a competitive Pokemon TCG player, and today I'm going to give you my opinion on the tier list for Paradox Rift. Now, I've played very limited games, I've thought about the format quite a bit, and I've been cooking in ways you guys can't even imagine. That being said, here's my gross overreaction for this current standard format, what's going to go in, where decks I think are going to line up. We can come back to this video at the end of format and you guys can make fun of me if I am completely wrong. I've been wrong in the past. I'll probably be wrong in the future. Heck, I'm wrong every single day. That being said, let's have a lot of fun here. Be respectful and let me know in the comments down below what you guys think are going to be tier 0, tier 1, whatever, how your pet deck or whatever has been performing. And if you enjoy this kind of content, please like and subscribe. That's all I really ask of you to help out this channel. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. Cofagrigus I don't think is necessarily good. I kind of put this in the don't play tier because I think it has some spicy like connotations, but I just don't know how I would make it work given the metagame. I think like there's always going to be a world where it doesn't actually, like everything doesn't gel together the way you want it to, unfortunately. I think same with Aegislash, where like the Aegislash deck seems pretty cool, but I think this format is really fast. Adding cards like Roaring Moon, Iron Valiant, to gut people's setups. Like I don't know how Aegislash ever deals with early Iron Valiant pressure, or like early Iron Hands pressure. So that puts us into the don't play this tier, I think, more or less. I think Arcdura will always fall into the tier 2 category as we're going, just because RCS is such a strong attacker that any RCS deck I think always ends up in tier 2 at worst. And my philosophy always falls into that logic. And Duraludon is still incredibly powerful. Yes, Chien-Pao Iron Hands should body it, and I think that Roaring Moon will absolutely destroy it. But if you play like Vitality Bands again, you go to 230, so maybe you can actually one-shot. But you have to play a heavier Duraludon line. So actually, upon further review, I think this is going to fall into tier 3, just because you don't have a great way to one-shot any of the new attackers into the format, and the deck itself actually gets completely bodied by these new cards. I mean, I guess Iron Hands doesn't really do too much, but the Chien-Pao part of that equation is still really suspect to deal with. Arc Drago V-Star I think is a similar situation where the format has now gotten faster. Your boys are getting bodied a little bit quicker, and that being said, you just can't really float the cards you want to float as well. I think Tina, Arc Tina actually might be tier 2 because you are a deck that can still one-shot these new threats. You don't get one-shot by these new threats. Your Barrel Engine, however, kind of gets gutted by a lot of these new things, which is a little bit unfortunate, because now setting up the Barrel against like an Iron Hands deck means that it just gives up an extra prize. And against Iron Valiant, it's just like a free pop, pick it off kind of thing. That being said, I do think that this version probably still has some merit to it with V-Guards and being able to like consistently path judge and abuse that little gimmick that we all know and love. I'm going to put Armarouge and don't play this tier because I think it's more of a gimmick and a funny deck than anything. I think Palkia probably falls into tier 3 because I don't know why Palkia would... Actually, no, dude. I think, unironically, Palkia has to go to the don't play this tier because you just absolutely get fisted by the power of the double Iron Hands. Like, it's like a pew, pew situation where, like, every single thing in your deck now gives up 3 prize cards. Like, come on. You cannot be playing this deck if you're doing that. Like, your Palkia Vs, that's a 3 prizer now. Palkia V-Star, that's a 3 prizer now. I just don't think you do that. I think Comfy Zardiax is a tier 3 deck just because I think it seems like the worst variant of a Lost Box version. And now with cards like Iron Hands and stuff, you don't even get to do the prize map where you force them to 1 prize and you can use something like Charizard to put a lot of pressure on. I think now you like just lose your entire prize map and the way you want to play the game. I think Arvinzard is still tier 1. I'm assuming this is Arvinzard with Pidgeot. Like I think it's still tier 1 because the damage it outputs and setting up is really good. I think obviously you have a couple of bad matchups introduced that can gut your board pretty quickly, but you can start playing like different things like TM Evolution Rock and stuff like that potentially just bolster your board and make them really strong. And I think your worst matchup is obviously Chien-Pao, and Chien-Pao adding Iron Hands doesn't actually like make your matchup any worse. Like your matchup is already pretty bad, so like why do you care? Is kind of like how I look at it. And Gardevoir in theory now loses a lot of stock because every deck should have an answer into Gardevoir. So that's a couple of your bad matchups that disappear. Shenpao, tier 1. It's been pretty broken this entire format. I think that if you're good at sequencing and learning how the deck operates, I think this deck will excel. It'll thrive. I think you will have a great time playing Shenpao with hands, without hands. Both ways is good. I just wouldn't play Dialga Magnezone. Just feels like kind of a, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, why did you pay $70 for entry for regionals kind of thing? Maybe a cup or a challenge. Like, maybe we can have fun with it. But yeah, I just wouldn't. Mousehold, I think, is a tier 3 deck because Mousehold has potential. I actually think this card is really cool. I would put a lot of stock into it, but I personally also think that there needs to be more like proven to me before I like pick up a deck like this that has 230 HP on its 2 prizers and its basics have like 40 HP basically. So every single thing in the deck, like one Iron Valiant Yoga Loop and I'm just dead, man. Like the game is over. I can't play. So I want to see that this is actually worth trying, or the format shapes up in a way where I can try it out. But right now I don't think it can be played. I think Scaladirge is also a tier 3 deck because the concept of being able to use Radzard over and over again and use Dirge into Dirge, like there's 2 Dirge EXs, right? And they're both pretty strong, I think. The problem is obviously it's set up a stage 2 deck, so it's something that I want to try when that doesn't happen. I think Zorobox falls into tier 2 just because you lose, in theory, Lost Box as a matchup. Obviously that might not hold true completely, and Iron Valiant is a new threat that will just completely gut your board and destroy you. But I think at the very like, I think it's like a high tier 3, low tier 2 deck where I think it's worth giving it a shot and seeing how it works. I think United Wings falls into tier 3 just because you lose Guardia as a matchup, I think, in theory, and hands just completely bodies you, like way more than something like Zorobox. So I just don't think you have an answer with this deck. I just don't know what this is. I'm just not going to even worry about it. Like, let's just pretend that it doesn't exist. I think Garchomp is... Oh, man. It's tier 3. It's tier 3. I want it to be tier 2, but it's tier 3 just because I think the weakness is unfortunately too much, and playing a stage 2 deck is hard. But yeah, I'm really sad that it's tier 3. I think Gardevoir is tier 2 now. I think it finally dips out of SS tier, and I actually think it catapults down from tier 1 to even tier 2. I think Gardevoir is still Gardevoir. It'll set up well. It'll play its game. But I think the problem is obviously that now you don't trade efficiently into a lot of the decks that you were supposed to trade efficiently into. Even Miraidon getting hands is really unfortunate because it puts you in a really tricky situation. Because you can't prize map the way you want to anymore. I think Goldengo is tier 2 actually. I think there's a lot of ways to play it, but I think this deck has a lot of potential. Obviously, Path Judge seems quite unfortunate for this deck and this archetype, but I think at the very worst it's tier 2. I think it can keep up with the big boys. Like you can one-shot Zards, you can one-shot Shenpaos with weakness. Like the problem is obviously 2/2/2 is just not a favorable path for you. So it's kind of figuring out how you can make this list work while consistently getting cards into your hand and also using you have the like make it, I don't know, the ability is sick. Like I don't know, it's cool. I just would put Gudra in tier 3. I think that it's similar to Zard where like now you lose a lot of your good matchups and it just feels like you're playing kind of a ghost of an archetype. I think Valiant goes into tier 2. I think both the Zatu build and the Urshifu build are very powerful in their own respective rights. And that's kind of where I like it. It's just where it is, I think, in a general sense. Cloth stuff I just wouldn't play. I think it's funny, but I just wouldn't play it. I think Zoroark is tier 3. I think there's actually like some merit to it, but I just wouldn't personally pick it up and play it myself. I think Lost Box is in tier 3 now because I think 230 HP is quite a problem to deal with. I think Roaring Moon is probably your best matchup out of the new cards, but both Valiant and Hands will completely shred your board up, which is really unfortunate. I guess Goldengo is a fine matchup too if you hit that, but Seapow is bad, Zard is bad. Like looking at the decks that are higher above this in the tier list, I think besides Zorobox and Guardy, everything else is like kind of bad for it. I think Tina is tier 1. I think Countercatcher is a great addition. There's so many turns where in Tina you have like the option between Boss or Roxanne or like Boss or Chorus, and there's like very few times you actually want to use that Boss's order over the Chorus or over the Roxanne. And it kind of becomes a luxury to close out the game at the very end. But if you play Countercatchers, now you can make a play where it's like Countercatcher, Roxanne Path, Countercatcher, Roxanne, or Iono Path. Like now you have a way to make this like massive swing turn that can take Tina from being a perennial, like always behind deck, to giving him that big star Requiem turn into that big next like 280 turn. Like you have this big play potential now, which I really like. Sables are tier 3, same reason. I think like your matchups are still pretty bad across the board for certain things, and yeah, I think Colorless Lugia is tier 2. I think it drops from tier 1 just because lighting guys are in the format now, and I think Zord is still a very bad matchup for you. Tina having counter catcher is kind of unfortunate as well because now they can play around your gift energies. But Snorlax is still quite a problem for them to deal with. So I think Colorless Lugia can give the top 3 decks that I have listed here a run for their money to some degree. But I just think that Lugia is still Lugia, and you're kind of playing a casino gamble deck at the end of the day. So it's like, now you have to play cards like Dunsparce if you still play your own Luxray. You could play hands, I guess, in your list. Like, I don't know, like Lugia is Lugia. Single Strike goes into tier 2. I think T-Tar still kind of explodes some decks. Like T-Tar plus Stone Journers. Like I think like double Stone Journers is probably necessary now to beat hands. But I think these cards are just kind of broken in general, like how they operate. So it's like good, I think, for what they're supposed to do. Don't. Like, we don't have to talk about it. We can just move on. I think DTE Mew falls into tier 2 because I think it doesn't beat its counters well enough. And I think people going to the first format of the season may respect Mew a little bit too much. And I think that a Tomb or Drapion will just completely body you. And that's just like a really unfortunate thing to happen with DTE. Like, yeah, you can path judge Luxray, but if Zard ever gets to play the game, you've lost the game. If T never gets to play the game, you've lost the game. And if Chimpao gets to play the game, I think it's close at that point still because they have to find their energies, which you can still kind of have some time if you're path judging them to a low card hand. And then I think you like fare pretty well against a lot of the decks in tier 2. But again, a lot of these decks, if they get to play the game, you probably lose the game. Is the problem with Mew. Fusion Mew, on the other hand, I think is a tier 1 deck because I think this is an archetype that has proven that it can go toe to toe with its counters, and it can do a ton of damage at different facets of the game. And I really like that it can put a lot of pressure on at multiple points throughout the game. So I like this. I think Zatu's a really cool card. I think Mewtwo's a really cool card. I just don't think they're good right now. I think Miraidon Hands is also tier 1. I think that this deck is quite good. I think Miraidon has proven itself by being a very recent regional champion, regional finalist, regional top 4. Like, I don't know how much more Miraidon has to do to prove itself that it is more than just an average deck. Sure, it's the same players playing it over and over again, but these players are performing. These players are putting the deck on the map. Like, these guys are showing us the roadmap of why Miraidon's very good. And having hands now, maybe you play DTE or something, gives you a really easy way to just like go turn 2, take 2 prizes immediately on your first turn on like a Ralts, a Mew, a Baby Mew, a Pidgey, a Frigibax, something. So you just get to accelerate the game immediately against these small decks that used to be a problem. I think Mimikyu stall stuff is actually pretty good. I'm going to put this and Block Stall in tier 2 together because I think these kinds of decks can be really good now that you have the addition of Counter Catcher and the cape, the pretty massive cape of the Veil of whatever, the plus 100 HP guy, and you have that tool, or this, like, you don't even need Penny anymore. You have Turo, which lets you pick up all your stuff, which is pretty insane too, I think. Reggie's is tier S. Don't question me. If you do, just, Dory's that way, just leave, honestly. You could just get out. Roaring Moon, I think, is tier 1, tier 2, I think, because I think Roaring Moon, while it's very powerful, and the power level is insane, it's a one-trick pony beat stick deck, and one-trick pony beat stick decks never truly succeed the way they're supposed to, simply because it's so linear. Every single turn, I know what you're going to do as Roaring Moon. So, like, as a good player, you can kind of game plan for it, because Roaring Moon has one mode. It's go. You don't have another game mode, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like, if you want to play Roaring Moon, play Roaring Moon. But it only has one game mode, which is go. I think Banette is probably tier 3. I think you just don't have that many good matchups and can't stick that many good things in the top decks. So, Tinglu I just wouldn't play. Serena I just wouldn't play. That control I wouldn't play. And I think Urshi is tier 3, finally, just because I think Urshi, in theory, loses Lost Box as a matchup. Hands is really, really bad for the deck, obviously. I don't think I need to say more about that. Tina with Counter Catcher seems pretty unfortunate as well. And I think Zard gets a little bit beefier. And obviously, Reggie's just beats all of these decks. So, Reggie gets Supremacy. In reality, I think Reggie's is probably like tier 3. To give it a shot, but for the sake of this tier list and having fun, it's going to be tier S. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it a ton. Please like and subscribe. Thank Thank you so much for supporting the content as always. See ya.